Good evening and good morning to people in North America. Welcome to our Simplylearn webinar, How Data Science Can Help the Post-COVID World Recover, with Dr. Santanu Bhattacharya, and Chief Data Scientist of Airtel. More about him in a moment. First, I would like to go through a couple of slides that will help explain how to participate in the webinar. So to participate in this webinar, you can use the chat window, and that's the bubble that will open up the window where you can enter a message. Please select all panelists. That way we'll be sure to make one of us gets your message. And remember to hit send. You can also enter questions that Dr. Bhattacharya will answer at the end of the webinar. Use the Q&A function. If you don't see the question mark button, the three dot button will open Q&A for you as well. We are being live streamed on YouTube today, and invite people to join us there. I'm going to start with a quick poll to take a temperature of how people are feeling today and get an idea of what the audience is like. So this is a two-part question. Oops. Hold on a second. Open. So what is your current role? And how are you feeling today? Thumbs up if you're feeling great. Thumbs down if you're not feeling so good. And if you're in the middle, we'll keep the poll open for about another 45 seconds. See that we see a number of students joining us. That's always welcome. You have about 15 seconds to enter your answers and submit. And then I will share with you poll results. So as you can see, the broad representation of people in different roles, student being the most common, and it's good to see that most of you are feeling pretty good today. And I hope the couple of you that aren't will be feeling better by the end of the presentation. So with that, I'd like to introduce Santanu. Well, welcome.
Hi,
Dr.
Stuart. Okay, all right.
I was going to say,
Go ahead.
Forgive me if I mangle your last name, but Dr. Santanu Bhattacharya is the Chief Data Scientist of Airtel. He's been in roles in data science and product at Facebook, AOL, Time Warner, and various startup companies. One of the most fascinating things about his career is that he got his PhD at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. And he is an alumni of MIT Sloan and the MIT Media Lab. So welcome. And what I'd like to do, go ahead.
Thank you, Stuart, and welcome everyone who is joining from around the world. It's an honor and a privilege to have an opportunity to chat with you. Some of you might look it up early in the midday. Some of you are catching up towards probably the later part of the day. Thank you so much for joining us.
So this is going to be a conversation, and I've got a few questions along the way to guide us. First, how can data science help control the health impacts of COVID-19?
All right, Stuart, am I audible? Because someone just
Yes,
posted
you are.
saying that he could not hear anything. Absolutely. All right. So that's an excellent question.
It's usually
As
me
you know,
that's not audible.
okay, all righty. All righty. As long as it's not me. So, as you all know, our life has changed in the past few months. On the morning of January 1st, when you woke up from the hard party at wherever you are on that day, most of you woke up, you had not imagined a world that would be so different today. Lives have been disrupted around the globe. In India, for example, we think the estimate is around 140 million people have lost their livelihood temporarily. Globally, the estimate by WHO, UN, and so on is up to 1 billion people could potentially lose their livelihood. The world has gone through a change that only happens once in sort of 100 years. The last one was the Spanish flu of 1918, 1919. So it's roughly about 100 years or so, right? So what do you need to do now that we are in the middle of it, now that we are spending a great deal of time figuring out what the remedies are, what the medicines are, multiple vaccines are on trials simultaneously around the globe. The last count I heard was 23 simultaneous trials going on that are known at the national level or at a large company level. I'm sure there are 50, 100 more at a lab, at a university level, and more. So what do you need to do, Stuart? We really need to do and figure out two aspects of this question, right? The first one I call is the people, places, and livelihood, right? What it really means, right? You essentially have now people who are being infected at an alarming rate. Some countries like India, it's still going up. In EU, it's sort of gone up, gone through the peak and going down. In the US, my other country, which is where I spend most of my life, it's still going up. So you need to figure out a way of figuring out who are the people who are being infected and how do you model that work, right? The second, there are multiple ways of doing it. Today, there are contract apps that are being employed around the world. The other alma and where I still work, MIT, there's a product called SafePath, which enables you to do basic contract tracing. It's the fundamental of doing contract tracing, using a privacy preserved, maintaining all aspects of privacy, which is if you're not infected, you don't get to see who you are in contact with because that would be a major violation of privacy. In India, we have Arogya Setu, which is probably the first public service app in the planet, which had 100 million downloads. So all the efforts are essentially going on right now to figure out the people and how the infection is traced, right? The second aspect of is what I call is the places. Now, people live in places, people work in places. What you need to do is, as we sort of try to contain the spread, we are trying to figure out what are the safe places today, tomorrow. What are the ways, the places that are going to go through, and we are going to go through two things, right? One is the wave of infection, and second is the wave of places. It'll go from one place to another place, no matter, unless you're locking everyone down inside their house, it's going to go from one place to another place. So there are some beautiful tools that are available in the market. Someone just said I'm not audible. Am I audible, Stuart?
You are to me, yes.
Okay, awesome. So some of the tools that are available today, for example, if you just look at the web traffic data, I'm browsing, I'm Shantanu, I'm browsing on my phone today in Bangalore, tomorrow in another place 200 miles from Bangalore. With the help of the Googles and the Facebook and many of the telcos around the world, we can actually get the movement data. And these help in beautiful way in figuring out how the diseases are, in the disease modeling world, right? How the diseases are going to spread from one place to another place. What are the future likelihood of the wave of the disease in different places, right? The third bucket of it, eventually, as painful as sad it may be, eventually you have to go and make a livelihood. You cannot be in this situation forever. Maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, you can be in the lockdown. So what you're calling is a safe unlockdown, and data science can play a massive role in that. When you think about on lockdown, what do? Very simple example. Suppose you're opening a factory in Chennai, which is about a couple of 100 miles from here, the automotive hub of India, just like Dearborn, Michigan in the US, right? Or now more of the southern states. When you do on lockdown, so think of a couple of things, right? There's a factory where they're trying to now get 6,000 people in every shift. Now, if you want to do the standard way of measuring everyone's temperature and making sure that they're wearing masks and making sure they're maintaining safe distance, letting in 6,000 people we estimated will take about 4 hours. Half the shift will be over by the time the people are checking in the new way. So how do you build that automated process, right? You build essentially one solution would be you build a vision model which looks at your body temperature through an IR camera, right? IR camera. It ensures you're wearing a mask, right? You are ensured that you're maintaining a safe distance as you're entering the factory, and automatically lets you scan through without touching anything. Then in that process, what we found out, about 70 to 80% of the check-in process can be done automatically. So that would be, and without interrupting the flow of the people and the flow of the work, right? So these are some of the new areas that will come up. You have to literally rethink your business. The way you have been sort of conducting business on a day-to-day basis is going to change rapidly. And more data science models in a world that's contactless, in a world where the hygiene is the premium, in a world where you have to maintain social distancing, you have to, one area of the data science that will sort of just explode is what I'll call the vision science, right? A lot of the stuff will be automatically monitored, checked in, SOPs would be cleared, safety level would be determined, and if you're not going to be safe in that workplace, it will be automatically flagged out. So this is the people, places, and livelihood. The second bucket is essentially what I call is the disease and epidemiological modeling. That's where data science is playing a massive role today. I'm not a disease modeler, but I work with some of them in terms of providing the data sets that we have. I also have an academic background, so I work with folks in academics. So I'm aware of it, right? So using the public health information, the epidemiological information, and figuring out how the disease will spread. That itself is a very important information that allows the government and the other agencies to figure out where to move your resources, where to get the doctors and nurses. How do you staff your hospital, right? How do you get the supplies in different parts of the country? If you're going to find out that in the state of Karnataka, which is where, or just taking a US example, in the state of California, there are going to be 122 hotspots, and I'm just making up these numbers, and these are the ones, then you would move your medical supplies accordingly. So the first one is just the disease movement. The second bucket is given a lot of the treatments, as I said, 23 different types of treatments are being tried out. That's at least in the large public domain, and probably in hundreds of sets of different types of vaccines, right? Take that data, build models, and figure out which ones are the best ones for the time being, right? For combating the disease, right? You would also look at the whole area of what it calls the healthcare delivery, right? Now you know where the disease is spreading. You also know that the models are being built to predict which medicines would be or which vaccines would be likely to be successful in what the processes would fall for the treatments, right? On top of that, you layer out the delivery aspect of it, right? If you can figure out, and you touched upon it a few minutes back, if you can predict what the resources need to be allocated, because one of our biggest challenges is we don't have infinite resources. One of the things that the whole world is struggling with today is the resources are far less than what you are facing. So unless you do intelligent resource allocation, you're not going to be able to minimize the impact of the disease. So these are a couple of the areas that I think where data science can play a great role.
Marvelous. Yeah, and one of the things that you kind of touched on in terms of treatment analysis is, some of the work that's being done in pharmacology, where they're modeling different compounds and trying to use artificial intelligence data science to test them in a virtual way rather than on individuals and come up with suggestions for maybe this drug that's already on the market is valuable in the COVID fight. So it's a really fascinating area. But let's ask another question, because this is an important part of what you discussed. How can data science help companies recover lost business and reinvent themselves? Because that's crucial for people making a living, for the employees of those companies to be able to go back to work and be productive.
Absolutely. As I said, I touched upon it on the last question, saying that, look, at the end of the day, if you cannot rebuild the livelihood, you would end up causing far more distress around the world than you've already caused, right? The disease is going to cause far more distress around the world than it has already caused. You have to be able to figure out to rebuild the livelihoods, and the only way to rebuild the livelihoods, other than the disease prevention and all of that stuff, is essentially letting business come back to an extent where they become operational, figure out the products and services that people are going to buy, and in that process, reinvent themselves, right? So this is an interesting area for data scientists. This is an area we're not comfortable. What's our best sort of comfort zone? Our comfort zone is someone tells us what to do, and you go and build that model, right?
Right.
Someone says that, look, I need to reach out, my word, right? I need to reach out to 50,000 people in the state of Karnataka who's going to change their handset, so I can run a campaign. Now I go build a handset upgrade model in my world of telco, right? I run a campaign. I'm very happy. Someone told me what to do, right? So there's business, there's product, and there's the data science. We come sort of at the back end. Think of this being the BMW car design, right? Someone told us that we need a 550 horsepower engine, turbocharged, and it should be fuel efficient, right? Third aspect, in a BMW is not that important yet. But yeah, once that's done, we have the BMW car engine designers, right? We are very good in going in the corner and figuring out the best engine the planet can build. However, we sort of have to get in our uncomfort zone today. We have to start reimagining the world where the businesses will operate from tomorrow. So there are, I would say, 3 or 4 aspects of that world. That world is going to be driven by social distancing, right? That world is driven by constant hygiene practices, masks, hand washing, all of that. That world is going to be contactless, right? Or minimal contact. And right, consequently, all of that is going to move digital. So I'll give an example. At Airtel, where I work, I'm the chief data scientist. It's one of the world's largest telcos. We recently started redoing our stores as the digital store, where you walk in, got this beautiful, the TV tables where you can touch, do a lot of your activities there. For example, you can pay the bills without seeing a person in a retail store. You can pay your bills, you can upgrade your plan, you can get information on new handsets, you can watch a piece of content that you're offering, all of that stuff. Look at our new products. It's a touchscreen table and you play with it, right? And we spend a great deal of time, effort, and money rebuilding the stores, a large number of stores. Guess what happens? In a world where hygiene is the premium, are you now going to go scrub that surface of that touchscreen every single time anyone touches it? Because ideally, that's what you should do. And that will probably rub off the elements in a very quick time, and it will make the whole thing useless. Now you have to reimagine how to rebuild that world, right? So think of any business that you're in. Now you have to sort of start thinking like a product person as opposed to just a data science person, right? With that, when the hygiene becomes the premium, right? Is that something the customer is looking for? Ask yourself a question. Is hygiene something customer is looking for? Is this something the customer will willingly pay for? So I'll give you 2 examples of recently. A friend of mine went for a tooth extraction to his dentist. So in India, tooth extractions relatively, normal ones are relatively cheaper. It's about 2,500 rupees in a big city, which is about $35. The person ended up paying another 700 rupees, which is another $10, which is 30% off the fee of the tooth extraction as a hygiene fee, because the dentist, the dental assistant, and and the patient, all three are in PPE suits, right?
Yeah.
And someone has to pay for it, right?
I had the
Interestingly
same.
enough,
I had the same experience just recently when I had a dental crown installed, and they charged an extra $25 specifically for the PPE.
absolutely. In fact, I'll tell you this, right? I come from a part of India called Bengal near the ocean, and we cannot live without fish. The guy who's selling me fish, he does a delivery. So if you buy beyond certain amount, say about $20, the delivery is free. But he has charging about 30 cents as a hygiene fee. So when your fish guy is charging you hygiene fee, you realize the world is going to change. And the world is going to change for almost permanently, right? So how do you, in a hygiene world, so think of the, a retail store, right? What are you used to doing? You are used to going to a retail store, you are used to trying out clothes and then buying the ones you want. Is that if you are going to be a data scientist who predicts the sell-through rate of the clothes, right? Who predicts the pricing, that's the part of the behavior you've never taken into consideration, right? Now, if people are not allowed to try your clothes, right, and they have to buy it, either buy it or not buy it, how does your sell-through model now work, right? You really have to start thinking about what it calls the signals and parameters you've never dealt with, right? Now, flip it, right? I am making it sound like it's a gloomy word, right? There are going to be opportunities for creating new sources of revenue. One, as I just said, is the hygiene fee, right? Would people pay for now a version of the world where if you make it contactless, if you make it really super hygienic, will they pay for it, right? Maybe the $2 you're trying to make out of a $30 piece of jeans, that is your net in profit, right? Maybe you can tack on another dollar as a hygiene fee, and you can provide really visible hygienic outcomes to your business, right? So reinventing business model, us data scientists cannot be sitting in a vacuum world anymore. You have to really start thinking all our models should go for a toss. The models that you built yesterday, my guess is that I was sitting down and writing down the 30 common models in 2 or 3 fields: banking, retail. Those are the 2 biggest ones that uses data science today. And my guess is about 30% of the models that we are building today will actually have to be rebuilt because of the way the world has changed, right? Very simple. Your pricing and sell-through rate itself will go through a toss if you don't consider the change behavior of the customers.
Yeah. And a lot of things that were developed in the last several years on the basis of people will want this as a convenience have now taken the forefront as people need to do this because of hygienic reasons. I was always reluctant to use the feature of depositing a check with my mobile phone. And now it's much easier to do it that way than to try to even go to the bank and use the ATM to deposit a check. Same thing as you were mentioning in retail apparel, where the applications for using your phone to take your own measurements and do a virtual try-on of garments was considered to be kind of a niche convenience thing, but now it's much more important. So it's a very interesting shift in the world. So
Absolutely.
the next question. So as you mentioned, this is the first global pandemic that we've had to deal with in 100 years. But Nassim Nicholas Taleb is a writer who came up with the phrase black swan to describe things that we don't have in our minds that can happen could disrupt our lives, that we've never seen them before in our experience, so we believe them to be impossible, but they're possible and they happen. What's the role of data science in preparing businesses, public policy to prepare, be agile in the face of these potential future disruptions?
Perfect. That's actually a very, very good question. Saying that, look, whatever had to happen has happened, right? How do you learn from it? How do you go forward, right? At the end of the day, as I said, you have to have, take care of people. You have to take care of safe places for them to live and work at, and you take care of their livelihood, right? And in order to make any of this happen, right, you have to sort of go back and figure out not only what happened now, but what can in the future if it happens next time, God forbid, I'm hoping not, what can you learn from here, right? Let me flip that question, right? I was just going to go play this question of yours, and I was reading through it and said, look, why, when I think about your question essentially says, what role data science is in preparing business, right? Sometimes you don't prepare business. Businesses figure themselves out. In my dream, I would never figured out that Louis Vuitton would be making masks, right?
Right.
And those masks would be sold probably at a reasonable profit, which would not obviously make up for Louis Vuitton bags and anything else, but it's not going to be a bad one, right? So one of the ways is that some businesses, the reality is that some businesses react very, very quickly, and they will survive and they'll do well, right? Some businesses won't, right? And they will not sort of make it in the longer run. Some businesses will naturally have a disadvantage. I mean, thank God, I thought I would never say that. Thank God I work for telco, right?
Yeah.
Our data consumption is up 65% in 6 weeks after, between say first week of March and middle of April. And a lot of the people who are sort of in your audience might say that, look, and it is true that a lot of times the data is being disrupted, the call is being disrupted. But my only defense is that when the consumption goes up by 60% in the middle of a lockdown of a country where you cannot really move a lot of people, even
Right.
though you're exempted as an emergency services, the reality is that a lot of people could not get out of their house, they themselves were in lockdown areas, a lot of the laborers moved back to their villages and so on. So when a business goes up by 60% in 6 weeks in the middle of a lockdown, that's an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So some businesses will be in an opportunity space. Some businesses will essentially figure out how to respond to it, right? But in all of them, what the one common thing that is sort of important, one of the exercises I'll do is I took a sectoral view. If I had infinite time, I'll take a sectoral view of different businesses, right? Take the top 6 businesses, right? Financial services, banking, retail, transportation, food and beverage / hospitality, and take top 5, right? I would actually take a sectoral view of it, look at recoveries within that sector, the subsectors. Within financial services, what went up quickly, right? So if within financial services, the stocks and bonds recovered, right? My guess is that insurance recovered because everyone is now buying health insurance. In India, people who didn't consider buying health insurance before, in the United States also, the people who are in the age group of 18 to 25 or 30, they considered themselves to be immortal and were one of the lowest in terms of buying health insurance. On the other side, the insurance was recovering, right? So I take a sectoral view. I'd look at the data of what recovered, and I'd essentially tie it back to the social reasons, right? And the other reasons that led to that recovery, right? In retail, right? I'll tell you what recovered in India in terms of everyone today wants to be a food delivery or a grocery delivery business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what happened? The staying at home became important. Touchless, contactless became important. Social distancing became important. So as a result of that, there's a sudden shift in behavior, right? So I'd look at the way I would do this. I'll take a sectoral view of, and the 6th one is my apology. The 6th one is obviously the healthcare, right?
Yeah.
I'll take a sectoral view of it, see what ones recover, which ones recovered, what are the reasons for that, and essentially sort of have a model behavior out of that, right? The reason why I'll take you one level below that, what I just said, right? The model behavior would be the reason insurance just went through roof, the health insurance is likely be that the 18 to 30-year-olds suddenly realized that buying an insurance is a good idea if you're going to be facing the pandemic for the next year or so, right? And
Right.
if that's the segment that went from being 30% insured to 90% insured, you suddenly have a signal that next time there's a health-related disaster, this is what might happen, right? So this is the way data scientists would, as in terms of helping businesses recover and building the public policy. So next, let's go to the next one. You asked for public policy, right? Again, I, as a data scientist, I'd look at what worked and what didn't work. Why are you able to, for example, do the spread of the disease, right? Well, are the current disease modeling models work? Are the current data inputs? See, a lot of new sources of data became available. For example, the contract tracing. No one would think of contract tracing as a way of collecting the data in January, right? By March, it was known. So what are the new data sources work? What are the models work, right? So sort of take the ones that are working versus things that are not, didn't work, and I'll essentially build my repository and the toolkits for the next one. So the next time it comes, my response time is much shorter. Remember, had we been able to respond faster, and it shows between countries, right? Countries that are able to adopt Vietnam as a country. I mean, remarkable, a country of, a reasonably large population had so few cases. And after the fact, it was now clear why it happened, right? So I'd look at three things. One, what new sources become available. Second, what type of models that work and didn't work. And third, what are the sort of what I'd call is the societal background, right? That made those first two possible, right? Why that some things work. I mean, for example, you could have done the disease modeling in case of Vietnam and India. In one case, it would have worked, and in other cases, it wouldn't have worked or worked less. That's because the one had certain amount of data available, the other did, right? So you can essentially, what I call is, on an average, a lot of things will look like they're similar. So, for example, the most of the countries, the EU countries, European Union countries that they recovered, on an average, the shape is same. The game of you need to go after as data scientists is what I call as a de-average. Figure out, because the societies are different. At a gross level, things are very similar. When you de-average, you'll actually end up saying this is the most of the reasons why things work the way they did is because three things, right? One, the availability of certain amount of data. Second, the societal norms, right? Some societies are more disciplined in terms of maintaining the hygiene, maintaining their social distancing, maintaining a lot of other things, right? And the third aspect of it, your ability to go build that, model that world, right? If you can figure out, de-average those two things, I think you'll be better prepared the next time than we are today.
Excellent. Let's take a moment to ask another question of the audience. And in this case, it's what data science skills are you currently using in your work? And we'll give you just a couple minutes. We won't keep it open for the full 5-minute time limit there, but what are the general areas of data science that you currently work in, currently use in your work? And we're getting a steady stream of answers coming in.
Polls are always fun.
Yeah. We'll keep the poll open for about another 45 seconds. Time to put in your answers. You can use obviously more than one.
Stuart, I have a question for you as you're doing the poll. Do you have a sense of where the people are joining from? Because the first chat I saw in the chat box was a gentleman or a lady, I could not figure out from the name, joining from Nigeria. and that was fascinating to see people joining from, many continents. Do you have a sense of that?
Um, I have a sense from previous webinars we've done that we get participants from a number from the Philippines, from various African countries, certainly from India and North America as well, and a few people from Europe. So we do have a global audience. It's a little bit limited by the time zones. Obviously, it's closer to midnight in the Philippines, but it's surprising the number of people we get from all over the world. It's a true global audience. And I'm going to go ahead and you got about 15 seconds to enter your answers and hit submit, and then we'll share the poll. And so the people who answered, the greater number are involved in data analytics. And then there's a smattering across the board with a little blip in terms of AI and machine learning. So let's move on to the next question. And that is, how is data science itself going to evolve as we come out of COVID? What will change in the field or the discipline?
Good question. Good question, Stuart. A couple of answers are very, very obvious, right? There are things that will get prioritized as a result of the COVID, areas of data science that will get prioritized. For example, while I have, been in data science for, good 20, 25 years, to a point where doing data science was not really considered a real good career choice. I handled data in the, early 90s, where being an expert in data, just guaranteed one thing, which is very long-term unemployment. In 30 years time scale, everything's become fashionable. That's my only conclusion, right? So
Yeah.
I've come to an area which is now considered ultra fashionable, right? So I'll give you a personal tidbit. So after my PhD, I started a startup, and that's why multiple startups in my resume. So when people say, look, in 1994, when, doing startup was unheard of, right? And building something on your was so considered so risky. What motivated you to go build a startup? And my honest answer has always been, the risk of the prospect of a very long-term unemployment usually is a great motivator. And that's exactly what motivated me to get started, right? But anyway, data science is a hot subject today. A couple of things will just float on the top immediately, right? One is disease modeling. I expect more and more people to go into that area because there's a demand now. There's more disease modelers that you need, epidemiological modeler, disease modelers, name them. People with understanding of pharmacokinetics and so on, right? The intersection of data and biology will get sexy, right? And that's been a trend for a while. It's just that it will get very, very hot. Second area I'll call is what I'd call is the whole area of call it customer analytics or customer modeling. As I said, businesses will have to come back. There's only two ways this business can come back. One, customers, and two, customers who preferably spend money with them, right? So unless you start understanding them, if that's usually is a good idea. I understand that in the world in the past 7-8 years, making money in a business was not exactly a priority, but making money will soon become a priority again. So understanding the entire customer dynamics in the constraints of what I just spoke about, 3 or 4 things, right? Contactless, touchless, hygiene, and all of that stuff will become extremely important, right? The third aspect, so the whole customer and the customer journey, customer analytics, customer modeling, customer behavior modeling will just get a new sort of fresh lease of life, right? The third aspect is going to be the just the businesses itself will now start look at re-evaluating the people they have in their workforce. So a friend of mine who has been in what I call the people analytics / HR analytics, I was talking to him. He works with a large consulting company, and that's been a steady stream of business, right? Nothing that's sort of the hottest thing in the market. He said, look, all of a sudden, businesses are reaching out to us and saying that, look, in a new world, how do I understand the nature of the work itself is changing, right? The working style is changing. The way people work from home or will do work from a combination of work and home itself is going to change, right? So how do you understand the impact of that on the business and the productivity, right? That area is, to me, was something that I actually hadn't thought of until this morning when I spoke to my friend. So the combination of what I call is a work and people and business will be itself, I'm guessing, will start becoming a somewhat of a hot area. The fourth area the data scientists will have to be evolved, and that I had touched upon before, but did not spend a lot of time on, is the digital skills, right? Because the world is going to be a contactless world, or largely a go towards being more contactless, unless you understand how the digital world sort of merges with our physical world and the interactions of that and the data it produces and how to sort of build the behavior of people, business, etc., out of that world, you are going to be somewhat limited. So this is the four areas that I think. One is the first of areas, the what called as the business modeling. Second is the whole aspect of customer modeling. Third is what I call is the entire area of people analytics, right? And the fourth is digital. This is the four areas. If you're taking a bet with your career, if you're a 24-year-old, and come out of your master's, and if you're starting to think about how the next 10 years would look like, these are areas that you would potentially explore. I'm not suggesting that other areas of data sciences are not going to be a hot growth area. They're absolutely going to be, but these are the sort of the novel areas in my, opinion, could see a quick surge in the next few years.
Excellent. So as we keep observing today, the world has changed. It's probably changed permanently. And so an important question is, what challenges data scientists face in doing their work? What kind of obstacles does this new world present to doing your work versus the way we were accustomed to when we were all going into our offices?
That you asked. In the beginning of this year, so I write on, I write on Medium. I have a reasonable number of, followers. I get into debates and all of that stuff. So one of the things I had predicted, and I can guarantee I had zero premonition or, future information on this. At the last week of 2019 or first week of 2020, I wrote that one of the big shifts that's going to happen in the data science, right, is that there will be shift on delivering on your promises. Data science, if unless you work for, leave the banks or the Facebook, Apple, Google, etc., right, Netflix, etc., of the out, where data science was the way of living. Data science was driving everything in there, and the data products were driving everything. If you worked at a most of the regular Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 or regular businesses, data science was a novel thing, right? The CEO knew that there was a group of very smart people hanging around in the company. They're doing some experiments. Once in a while, you hear exciting news that there is their recall and precision on certain models have gone up, and the CEO, the CFO, and the CIO would pay heed to that. There'll be once in a while articles, press releases on how great the company is doing using this new technology. But in reality, those are all experiments, right? Most cases, right? I was looking at a number that only 13% of the data science projects last year actually saw production, right? It's a very low number, even lower than the IT. because rightfully so, it's not a failure, but rightfully so, it is the year we experimented. 2020 is the year of delivery, right? You are not going to be able to not deliver and keep building models. So that's the first thing, right? It's the new challenge. If you are in data science, you better make sure you're working on projects that have business impact, right? Excuse me. Not suggesting that experimental or projects or exploration type of projects will not be there for you to engage in, right? You'll always be building fundamental stuff that will be useful a few years from now. But the ratio of experiments versus production, instead of being 85-15 or whatever, 80-20, it will flip, likely flip.
Yeah.
That's the first thing, right? Then the second shift is, emphasis on existing roles in the field, right? What I mean by that, look, today when someone says, I am a data science, I'm a modeler, right? The business sort of, knows that you're a very smart guy, but beyond that, the business have no idea what you do, right?
Correct, yeah.
Today, your ability to now go and talk to, a marketing person, right? Then understanding in English, what do they do? Why do they run campaigns? What are how do the campaigns tie to the dollar that the company brings, right? Think from that in marketing, sales, whoever is using your product, backwards to the products you need to build, backward to the model you need to build. You need to understand the whole chain, right? You cannot be sitting in one corner being a scientist and sort of living your glories anymore. Unless you understand the chain end to end, you will actually fall behind. So these are the two things that I would sort of consider as new challenge. Let me flip it also the question, and I'll take an additional sort of opportunity, right? There will be new roles being created in the next few years. And if you are a young person, especially, right, or even a mid-career person, I would urge you to say, look, don't look at it only as a new challenges. Every challenge is an opportunity. People rise above the challenge and make a name for themselves, right? This is an inflection point in all of your life. Inflection points only come in once in 10 years when the US economy goes through a cycle. Major inflection point, as you were talking about nothing to left, right? Come in once in 50, 100, years, right? The major inflection point in the 20th century in the world economy was the First World War and the Second World War, and maybe a few other things, right? It did not, the financial meltdown was maybe the third one, right? This is a 1 in 100-year inflection point. Take advantage of this, right? There have been new roles created. There have been new types of technologies being developed. There are new types of problems being solved. Go at the forefront of it. Understand what you do in the context of the society and the businesses, and you'll be far more valuable in next 2 to 3 years. Because think of an inflection. The way I think of an inflection is think of being a tsunami, right? The waves look very daunting, but if you're on the top of the wave, you have a great view of the world.
Yeah, I mean that's a
friend of mine.
I was going to say that's a wonderful metaphor because if you can surf the wave, you're in control of it, and if you can't surf the wave, it's in control of you.
Absolutely. I'm not even a swimmer, but I always marveled living in California. I always marveled at the people who are riding on the top of the wave. Yeah. And now this is not even a wave; this is a tsunami. And if you are a tsunami rider, you'll make a name for yourself. That's guaranteed.
The last question for discussion is, what kind of new skills should data science practitioners adopt in order to ride that wave, in order to be prepared, to have their set of skills and their surfboard ready?
Perfect, right? So, sure, I'll take this example again. What happens after a tsunami? A tsunami comes to your land and it flattens every house, right?
Yeah.
Which is what you're saying, right? Businesses are being flattened, a lot of livelihoods being lost, right? What do you do after that?
You rebuild.
You have to go. No, you go pick up your basic tools. You pick the hammer, you pick the nail, you put the baseboard, and build a house, right? So just like that, you're not going to now go design the skyscrapers because the materials are just not available. It's going back to basics and rebuilding everything. My answer for this would be just think from that perspective. New skills that you need to rebuild after a tsunami of this skills are actually pretty simple. That's why I think the chances of success are rather high, right? I would just take a contrarian view and just say unlearn ML, machine learning, right? What I mean by that is very simple. When we are sitting in the corner of the labs and building things, toolkits on our own, we had plenty of time to go do things that are crazy, right? Everyone will try to learn CNN and RNN as if we are all of us are involved in building a self-driving car, right? We are not. Most of our business problems can be solved by simpler models that fix most of the business problems, right? Go figure that out, right? Go get involved with the business. Use simpler toolkits, use simpler language, use simpler explanation with the business to say, look, one of the pet peeves I have had always with our data scientists is that you go to your business, the business saying, look, they're struggling with the model, saying that this is not yielding the results, right? That way I'm expecting. Can you help? The guy says, no, my precision went up, my recall went up, and my awk is a great one, right? What are you talking about? The guy is thinking, look, one is speaking in Spanish, the second guy is speaking in Pushto, right?
Yeah.
It just doesn't work, right? So pick up the simpler toolkits, go in with simple problems. Like one way to make friends and one way to sort of help the business is essentially go solve the basic problems, help them get a few brownie points, few $1,000s in revenue, and once the trust is built, scale it up, right? Then it's in there working in your territory, right? In terms of your skill set, I would say go back to basics. Yet again, both the advice are going back to basics, business-wise as well as skill set-wise, right? I see a lot of people spending a great deal of time trying to learn toolkits that are complex, right? That, then you ask them the simple thing, what's the minimum sample size for a 2-parameter t-test? They will struggle. Go back to the math, stats, probabilities, and so on, right? The basic stuff. Understand, look at the data in your hand, like look at understand data cleansing, right? Basic statistics on the data, why data is good, what data is bad. We used to think of a world when I was growing up, we would spend 70% of the time in what I'd call the descriptive stats, basic math, data cleansing, and so on. Model building was only 10-20% because most of the world was modeled in a simpler way, right? Go back to that. It'll actually yield more results business-wide than you can imagine. And once you have those wins, right, in the next 2 to 3 years, as the world helps you rebuild, you will essentially be the heroes that the world will look up to, right?
Very good. So that brings us to the last question, or the last poll, I should say, where we're going to ask people, what data science skills are you most interested in adding? Building on what Tana just said, so we'll just keep this open for about a minute or so. But of the things that you look forward in the post-COVID world, what are the things that you want to add to your toolkit so that you're positioned to, so to speak, rebuild the world after the tsunami? We'll just leave it open for about another 30 seconds or so. You have your last chance to get your answers in. Hit submit. In about 10 seconds, I'll share the result. So people are interested in data analytics, but the largest number are interested in AI and machine learning. Go ahead and clear that. And we're on to the question and answer period. So we have a number of questions that came in from the audience. And I will take a look at those. Should be asking you this just a moment. Yes. So a lot of questions. Some companies are laying off AI and ML engineers, saying that the previous data developed hasn't proved useful. Could you share your thoughts on that?
So part of that is and I can tell you which companies, right? A part of that is sort of the natural business cycles, right? If you recall, in the sort of at the 40th minute or so, I said a word that making money had become unfashionable in the business world for the past 7-8 years. And you can name the companies, all the new age companies, most of the unicorns in India and abroad had gone through this, and funded by a couple of VC and the PE funds that thought that just winning market share at any cost was important and making money wasn't. They hired a large number of people, right? And a lot of the data scientists got hired there. Sometimes they invaded universities and hired the entire class. So part of that was just an excess building up and shedding that excess skill set, excess workforce, right? That's natural in any event like this. That's expected. It's a 1 in 100-year event, so that I would not worry about. So what ends up happening is that it's a sort of a as I said, it's a tsunami that sort of goes and destroys the houses. So you're seeing the phase of the house being destroyed. But the moment once it's sort of done, in the short run, in less than 6 months, you'll start seeing that people getting redeployed and now building the houses, right? Which is equivalent of data scientists being deployed in solving the types of problems that did not exist before. So I would not worry about that as being a phenomenon that is going to be. So unlike, for example, I think most of your audience is way too young for that, Y2K, right? Year 2000 problem. There, what happened was a very specific problem that needed to be solved, which is the 2 digits of the computer, 00 indicated, when the year 2000 reached, the computers would not have known what it meant, right? Because the computer programs are not expected to last that long.
Sure.
So there, this very specific workforce was deployed to go solve that problem, and day after that, they sort of became unemployed because the work had a fixed timeline. This is not like that. The businesses will come back. We'll probably need more data scientists. In fact, my bet is that 3 things will grow very, very fast, right? One is all things digital, right? Second, I call is all things data. And third is automation, right? The world, the way they are being, and if you have any of these 3 skill sets, I just would not worry about whether, some companies lay off machine data scientists. I would, however, worry about one thing though. If we are not a true data scientist and, someone who, there's a lot of people I know that did not focus on what is there, the 52nd minute I said, like focus on the basics. If you did not have a math stat probability background, if you didn't understand data cleansing, and you sort of just used something, fork from the GitHub to go build your model, or you just looked up someone else's work and sort of, built on that model without understanding the fundamentals of that, then you're in trouble. If you did not do the hard work and sort of got, rode the wave in the last set of irrational exuberance, then you're in trouble, right? If you're the surfer who accidentally rode a wave, because of the people who don't know how to surf, some will accidentally ride a wave also. then you are prone to falling off because now the wave is much bigger than you could have handled.
Yeah. Building on that, there's several questions from people who are of different backgrounds, mechanical engineering or finance, who are interested in moving into data science, and what are the the basic skills and tips for somebody who's going to switch from one field into data science?
Okay, let me rephrase, Stuart, because this is where I lost you. It was a bit of a inaudible. So you're saying that, yeah, it's better now. So you're saying that if someone is switching from other field into data science, how do they start, right?
Yeah, what skills do they need to have, and what kind of a path do they need to follow?
So this is reasonably structured. People coming from other field, right? So other field can be broken down in two areas, right? One is what I'd call as a math and science dominated field, and the second could be not dominated by that, engineering, etc., but not math and science, right? So for someone who's coming as, for example, as a software developer now wanting to, so let's take two common paths. A software developer who is wanting to go to data science, right? The path, typically, I believe firmly in the world of building a bridge, right? Which is use your skill sets that you have in existence, right? Apply that in a new field. That's the bridge to get into the new field, and then acquire the skills in the new field and sort of build your house, right? So there, I would say there is two ways to do it, right? Either you go through the path of being a data analytics person, which is build the skills around, tableaus, dashboarding, basic data analysis, because in that process, you end up picking up the other skills that you needed, some math, stat, and so on, which sort of prepares you for that. If you are in data engineering skill, it allows you to deal with two things, right? One is the scale and understanding how the data pipelining works and so on, right? So from engineering, you could either go as, try to switch to a data engineer or try to switch to a data analytics. And then eventually, once you get in better in either of them, there could be a path to data science. Not always, because you have to be. On the other hand, if you're coming from, I'd call it math, stats, probabilities, physics, and so on, right? Those, but have not done a lot of sort of what I'd call is the engineering, enterprise grade engineering. My answer to that would be just focus on computer science courses, right? And coding. You have to code. I mean, I haven't seen a data scientist. There are people who are saying, they're new uncode or no coding or low coding data science models, the data science approaches that could help you get a data science job. Yes, those are there. I understand AutoML and the other stuff, but they're not there yet, right? It's not, and unless you are an expert in data science itself, don't go into sort of, it comes almost in a reverse order. You become an expert in data science and then you sort of go pick up the low code or no code approaches because you understand fundamentally what it does. So if you are coming from those, like what I call the science path, your approach should be go understand coding, go understand work in engineering, then use your leverage, which is the math and science background, to now go and some algorithm background to go build a career in data science.
Okay.
I wish I had a board behind me. I could have literally drawn that path. That line is actually,
exactly.
that path is reasonably well defined. You just have to make sure you follow that path.
Someone asks, what's your opinion of somebody becoming a combination digital marketing expert and data scientist? Is that a good combination skill set?
It's actually not a bad combination. It's actually a pretty good combination. I touched upon that somewhere in the middle of the conversation, saying that you have to understand what the digital market. So, for example, when you said digital marketing expert, I'm assuming you're not saying that I'm an expert in SEO and SEM. Can I become a data scientist? Because that's not, I'd recommend. But if you understand the digital marketing, how digital channel works, how data pipelining works, how does the app work, what's the notification in an app, how do you prioritize the cards in an app? If you understand those aspects, those are extremely valuable skill sets in a data scientist, right? I wish I had data scientists who would actually understand, right, the app world much better than they do today, right? Now that is understandable. But if you're thinking that SEO, SEM expert, doing keywords, and then want to go to data scientist, I don't think there's a great connect. I mean, you're just starting fresh.
This is what in American slang is called inside baseball. This is a question. It's very specific. How is data science and artificial intelligence applied in improving business performance at Airtel for increasing average revenue per user? Is that something you want to discuss, or is that a trade secret?
I cannot disclose. That's one question I cannot take. I should have said it beforehand, that anything related to, my current employer is actually off the record. We are a regulated industry, and I cannot answer that because it could be seen as an, insider information. So I cannot answer that.
Yeah, I figured that there might be an obstacle with that question, but I wanted to let the user know that we had received it. I think that's pretty much all the time we have for questions. And so what I'd like to do then is go ahead and say thank you to Santanu for joining us. Let me share with everyone the
Steve, are you signing off? Sorry,
yes,
Stuart, are you signing off?
We are signing off.
I just wanted to thank everyone in the audience. Thank you again. It's been a pleasure, interesting set of questions. Hopefully you get to, I remember, I was, at one time I was 25, 26, wondering about the world, what to do next. As I said, my world was rather bleak because I was an expert in data. But, the world has changed. So I would say a couple of things, right? One, do things, whatever you do, be passionate about it. Just sort of my closing comments, number one. Number two, the field that you're in today, and if you're interested in data science, that field is just going to grow exponentially. So don't worry about the next 5, 10, 20 years. Just focus yourself in understanding things at a base level. And number three, I tell everyone, enjoy it, right? If you're not having fun doing whatever you are doing, don't do it. Like, you're better off doing something else. Just don't jump into it because all your friends, flatmates, neighborhoods, and in India, uncle and aunts are asking you that you should go do data science. I've heard that, I have had one gentleman, one young man coming saying that, look, I really don't want to do data science. I said, why did you call everyone? Why did your entire family call me for an internship? Because my uncle wants me to do the data science. My father wants me to do it. Don't do it. Not for the right reason. Don't do it. You should enjoy things that you do. With that, I'd like to again thank you for people, everywhere from United States, Africa, India, and my friends in Philippines. All these are wonderful countries. I've been to about 40 countries around the planet. People around the planet are wonderful. Everyone stay safe, stay at home. We are going to get through this one collectively, and the world is going to be a better world 5 years from now. You'll all forget about what happened. We'll not forget, it will be in our memory, but we'll largely be overcoming most of the hardship we have had. Stay safe, wear a mask if you can, and you should wear a mask, and if you can, limit your travel to the essentials. That will help prevent the outbreak, and it will get us over the hump as quicker than we would do otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate your time today. And we'd like to invite everyone in our audience to join us on the 30th of, see here that says Thursday, not this Thursday, but Thursday the 30th of July, for a panel discussion on startup career strategy, the highs and lows. It's going to be a panel discussion between the founder of Simplilearn and two other high-profile entrepreneurs, Ashish Gupta, who is now with Helion Advisors Venture Capital, and Ram Gupta, who is with Aryaka Networks. So hopefully we will see you all there, and you can get in touch with us through our social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And that concludes today's webinar. So I'm going to ask Santanu and everybody else to log off at this time. There will be a survey that pops up after you do sign out of WebEx, and we'd be grateful if you would answer those survey questions. So again, thanks everyone.
Thank you, and bye-bye.